Hello everyone, today let's solve the problem number 1141, user activity for the past 30 days 1, right? So what the question states here, we have to write the SQL query to find the daily active user count for a period of 30 days. So yeah, that's what this one states as well. Question. So here we have to write the SQL query to find the daily active user count for a period of 30 days ending on 27/07/2019. That is inclusive, they have given inclusive, right? So ending on 2019, I mean 27/09/2019, right? So what is the conditions, what are the requirements, or what are the conditions here? So a user is considered active on the day if they made at least one activity on that day. User is considered. Let's come to example 1 here. So first of all, before going to this one, we have the activity table here. We have been given the activity table where we have been shown the each column name here: user ID, session ID, activity date, and activity type. User ID and session ID is of the type integer, activity date is of the type date, as well as activity type is of the type enum here. So here they have clearly mentioned this may have duplicate rows. The activity type column is an enum of type open session, end session, scroll down, and send message. See here, this one they are speaking of. And the table shows the user activities for a social media website. Note that each session belongs to exactly one user. Just keep this in mind. So what we need to do here, we have to write a solution to find the daily active user count for a period of 30 days ending on 27 inclusively. So that's what I said, right? Initially, user was active on some day if they made at least one activity on that day. So we have discussed this one. We have to write the SQL query to find the daily active user count for a period of 30 days ending on 27/07/2019, and based on the requirement, a user is considered active on a day if they made at least one activity on that day, first one, and we have to return the result table in any order. So we can return the result table in any order doesn't matter here. So they have strictly mentioned in the question, and we have to ignore the days with 0 active users. So we have to ignore the days with 0 active users. So those days should be ignored. Just keep this in mind, this is very important, right? So let's come to the example 1 here. So we have the activity table here. Just give me a second. We have the activity table here. So user ID, session ID, activity date, and activity type is given here. So we have already discussed this one. We have open session, scroll down, and end session, right? As well as send message as well. Sorry, I forgot this one. 4 activity type is of 4 types, right? So activity date, on the date they have given. So here session ID and user ID. So user ID you can clearly see here. In this case, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are the user IDs, right? So here we have got the output. So first thing is we need to consider day and active users here in this case. So they have given here within this one activity table, this one, right? So we should return the day and active users 2, and here we got 2. So what this states here is user 1 and user 2 were active, right? So active users equals 2. So in this case, user 1 and user 2 were active. So this one we are considering. User 1 and user 2 were active. So we are considering 2 here in this case. User 1 and user 2 are active. So active users equals 2 we are considering in this case, right? So same goes with 2009/07/20. 2019/07/20. So just give me a second here. This one here you can clearly see this one 20 we have within 2, user 2. So this one within 1 we have this one, right? Open session, scroll down, end session. So 2019/07/20 and 2019/07/20 in this case, right? So here we will ignore the other days, they said, right? So this one we will ignore. So now we have 2 in this case. 1 and 2 were included, right? So 1 and user 1 and user 2 were active. So active users equals 2 in this case. 1 and 2 were active. So active users in this case is 2. You can clearly see in the table, right? So this one, if you remember this one. accordingly with the question. So let's go with the ID 3 here. You can clearly see here in this case 2019 2107 this one 2019 here, this one let's consider here for 3 until 3 for all these things we have 2019-07-21, right? So and also for the 2 this one for the ID 2 if you see here for this one whatever I have marked, this one also contains here 2019 I mean 2107-21, I mean sorry 2107-2019, here also 2107 this one 2019 we have an user ID 3. So this one we will consider the first one and we will ignore the duplicate ones. Now till here we will ignore this one. So 3 and 4 is not involved, 2 and 4 is also not involved, 1 and 4 is also not involved. In this case these two. So 2 and 3 is involved. Now 2 and 3 is involved. In this case user 2 and user 3 were active, so active users were again 2 in this case, right? So based on the day here, in this case, we got 2019 2007-2019. Same thing, we need to return this one. So because 1 and 2 here you can clearly see this one and this one. This is 2007-2019 itself. So this is not, this might not be visible. Just give me a second here on this case. So yeah, here this one I'm speaking of. This one, and we will ignore the duplicates, and within the ID2 also we have this one, right? So we'll go with 2007-2019 we need to return here, and the active users are 2. We know this one, right? Active users are 2, 1 and 2, right? So here in this case 2019-07-21, because we are considering this one with the ID2 and with the ID3 as well. So we will ignore the duplicates in this case. So active users are 1, 2 and 3, nothing but 2 again. So again active users 2 we need to return in this case 2107-2019. So this is how we got the output, right? So I hope the question is completely clear. What we need to do is completely clear as well. What we will do first let's discuss the approach and then let's write the query. Initially as usual let's discuss the approach. So let's discuss the approach step by step. First thing is we need to filter the data here. Just give me a second. Yeah, we need to filter the data here. When I say filter data, we have to select the records where activity data, activity date, right? We are considering the activity date. So we will select the records where activity date is within the 30 days. So that's what they have asked in the question as well. Ending on, this is important, 27/07/2019 means 30 days here. So that is the reason. 30 days we will consider. So we have to select the records where activity date is within the 30 days ending on 27/07/2019. So we will filter the data. This is very important, right? So let's move on with the second step here. We will group by day and user ID. When I say we will group by day and user ID, a user is counted exactly once. We know this one, right? A user is counted exactly once per day, because even if they have multiple activities, because in the question, while explaining the question, I said we have to ignore the duplicates. In the example also I have mentioned several times the dates were ignored. The same dates were ignored, right? So the same dates were ignored. So a user is counted only once per day. A user is counted only once per day. If we have different dates, that is different. So per day a user is counted only once or exactly once. This is fine, right? So let's move on with the third step here. I hope the second step is completely clear. The third step here is we have to count the distinct users. When I say we have to count the distinct users, we have to go with the we have to count the unique users per day. By this time you would have already guessed that we will be making use of the count keyword, as well as for counting the unique users we will be going with the distinct keyword, right? So these things should come to your mind. These things has to come to your mind when we discuss the approach, right? So we have to count the unique users per day using the count here in this case. So we have to count the unique users per day using the count of user ID. So we will be going with count of user ID. We can make use of the distinct keyword as well. Let's see. So this is the approach basically we'll be going with. right? So this is the approach that we will be going with. I hope the approach is completely clear. The first step is filter data, the second step is group by day and user ID, and the third step here is count distinct users. So this is the approach that we'll be going with. Now let's start writing the query. So let's write the query quickly. So here the first step, we know that we have to filter the data for the last 30 days ending on 27/07/2019 accordingly with the question. Let's go with here with act as, this one is fine. We have to filter the data for the last 30 days, right? Ending on the particular date, nothing but 27/07/2019. How can we write this one, or how can we articulate that one in the form of code? So I'll just go with select here, select activity date. We have discussed this one in the approach as, so let me give here, let me consider day here, and let me consider this is based on the user ID. I should have copied this one. This is fine. This is coming from basically activity table, right? So let me copy paste this one quickly, coming from the activity table. So activity date has to be between 27/07/2019, right? So interval is 29 days, between 30 days, right? So filter data for the last 30 days. We have to filter the data for the last 30 days. It has to be between the this one 30 days, right? So how can we articulate that one in the form of query here? So I'll just give here where activity date. Let me copy this one quickly. Activity date between, so SQL provides between keyword, right? So between date underscore sub, this one will be 2019/07/27. So this one is of the interval 29 days. So this one will be 29 days. And let's go with here same thing, 29 days interval we have. So let me copy the same thing here. Yeah, let me paste it over here. This is fine. So we will group by activity date and user ID. So I'll just go with here group by activity, so date and activity date and user ID, right? So sorry, activity date and user ID. So we have discussed this one during the approach. That's what we are implementing that one in the form of query here. So this is it for the first step. What we did, we know this one. We are just filtering the data for the last 30 days ending on 27/07/2019, right? The second step, if you remember, it was we have to count the distinct users per day. So distinct users per day means only once we have to select for the user, right? If you remember. So per day user is counted only once. So in this case, we have to count distinct users per day. There were other users as well, if you remember, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, there were other users. Just give me a second here. This one, I'm speaking of user ID 1, 2, 3, 4. So distinct users, we have to count the distinct users per day, right? How can we write this one? So let me go with the select here, select day. Let me count should be based on the user ID. So here how many times the count. So we have to ignore the if same users if same user is having the same activity date, right? So we need to ignore that one. So first we need to count for that one, right? Select day comma count of user ID as, so this one as active users will be counting, right? So this one, let me write here active underscore users. This is coming from act, and we will group by day. So this is fine. So let me hit the run button quickly. So you can clearly see here the sample test case is getting passed. So let me hit the submit button very quickly. So here you can clearly see all the test cases are getting passed. Means the code works absolutely correct on this case, or the query works absolutely correct on this case. Sorry. So yeah, I hope whatever query that we have written is completely clear. For now, this is it. Thanks for watching, guys.